Okay, next several midweek videos, and I'm depending on how I want to do things. Quite possibly weekend videos as well. I'm going to start taking deeper dives into games and everything. So in a sense, gaming lore. So the one I want to kind of get into that it was almost 30 years ago now, being 2025, and it was back in 1998 when I was introduced to this one, and I do have videos about it, like a character creation and pretty much like a flip through of a good old Trinity. So like I said, I kind of date myself by saying that I was introduced this into 1998 and everything. So as you can see, I still have like the old hardcover book, and it's kind of beat up and everything. So what I'm going to do in these videos is kind of pull out the book and kind of go over lore and stuff and everything, so people can get like a better understanding of games and stuff, so that way people aren't necessarily going in blind, or they can reference these videos to be able to get like a better understanding of the game, so they don't necessarily have to, yeah, in a sense, everyone has to get like the rule book or whatever. So as I'm kind of flipping through, I'm thinking this one kind of go over like the history of Trinity real quick. So now they do have like a good timeline in it. So 200-year timeline. So basically, it gives you like a good indication of how things built up and everything. So now, and this way, like I said, people have like an understanding of the game, the backdrop and everything. So that way, they have video reference. So that way, if you're a dungeon master, game master, whatever, or narrator, however you want to play whoever wants to be in the sense the referee. That's what basically DMs, GMs, narrators are. Is that they control all the NPCs. So it would probably be the way I see it, and of course, this is my opinion. Is this way the DM can be the one that is the only one that necessarily would need the rule book, so that way people, like the players, can reference this, so they can go in oh hey, we're doing like a new campaign or everything. Sort of for instance, like my group and I, we've been flip flopping with different campaign or games and stuff. So we started with D&D, and I have videos on these too. So it's like D&D campaign, or Call of Cthulhu, or Cyberpunk, which we did with the Fates. Star Wars will be forthcoming once we finish that campaign up and everything. So this way, these videos will be designed to kind of give an overview for games like Trinity here. So that way, players can even DMs can reference it and everything. So they have an idea, oh hey, for instance, my group and I, maybe we could get into this and everything. So this is designed to kind of give backdrop to get into this game. So this history of this game kind of goes back from the early 20th century all the way to the early 21st 22nd century and everything. So you got a 200-year history and everything. So it lays it out and everything. So it starts all the way back in 1921, when first public instance of supernormal acts and events are starting to come up. So think of someone maybe Einstein or Stephen Hawking. All of a sudden you got this a super genius that comes into play, and oh hey, it's kind of minimal and everything early on. So in 1923, Maxwell Anderson Mercer establishes Aeon Society for Gentlemen. So you can see, in a sense, the beginnings of the Aeon Trinity group in the early 22nd century and everything was first established, as you can see, by Maxwell Anderson Mercer in 1923. So in 1970, it mentions a dramatic increase in supernormal events, as normal human society is amazed by the achievements and aghast at the actions of unusual individuals. Now, in 1998 is when the aberrants, or at the time they were called novas, they first appear. Now, the prequel game of Aberrant kind of goes much more in depth on the history. So as you play novas, as they're called then, you start playing characters like that. So that 1998 is the Galatea satellite, pretty much goes through the orbit and dumps like radioactive material all through the jet stream, and this is where you see the Novas, who become as time progresses the aberrants and the villains of this game. That's when they first popped up, and so we jump up to 2021, and so the aberrants start to proliferate, and their activity, struggles, and depredations increasingly endanger and harm normal humans. So you can start to see the conflict, in a sense, WW3 starting to, in this sense, starting to happen between the Novas, or the evil groups, aberrants and stuff, are starting to butt heads and everything, and things are starting to escalate. Now in 2022, Dr. Sojuk Burlesemy invents a viable hyperfusion. So think of being able to start building spaceships and everything in 2022, and in 2 years later, the United States unveils their hyperfusion orbital craft, and then of course in 2024 to 2032. Various nations lost orbital defenses, like the Orbital Military Network, OMEN, defense networks, to pretty much counteract the aberrant activities. And in 2031, the United States establishes the first Olympus lunar base. They call it Olympus. So as you can see now, we're starting to get into outer space with the invention of hyperfusion. Of course, that in a sense kind of fans the flame and helps escalate the tensions between everyone. So 2046 mentions that aberrant group Allah's Legion seizes control of the little island of Bahrain, and then this helps escalate. As you can see, it starts escalating as years go on. 2049, the United Nations finally declare war on the aberrants, and then of course in that year, an aberrant group called the Space Brigade takes over the Olympus base, and they end up destroying about 75% of the OMEN satellites. And so the war pretty much lasts from 2049 to 2061. So you have several events through that. So aberrants destroy the holy city of Jerusalem. Pronunciation is always going to suck, bear with me. And that's delayed until after the war, so that was in 2052. And of course, China is in this iteration, in this history, they're kind of behind the scenes. They're staying out of the conflict. They're staying neutral and kind of doing stuff behind the scenes. So in 53, they launched the Xingjiang Zuchi, the first manned interplanetary exploration craft, and it's headed to Mars. And so as far as you can tell, they're successful and everything. So there's an aberrant called Calvert Wyckoff. He pretty much offs himself in the Great Plains and pretty much destroys America's grain belt. And of course that with the United States, that pretty much destroys their food source. So they next year in 2055 they invade Canada, and they also take over Mexico and everything, because they need the resources and everything. So that's in 2055. So that's another event they kind of mention everything. So there's another aberrant called Mungu Backlash Kuwasha. He basically destroys what's called the OpNet, which is in a sense the version of the internet in this game. He destroys that in 2061, sending the communication technology back 100 years. Now, up until then, with for instance, China in 53, they launched their planetary first vessel to Mars, and they've been kind of behind the scenes doing stuff. They're just kind of staying quiet and everything. 2061, they basically make an ultimatum, and they point in a sense a bunch of nukes at Earth and everything, telling the aberrants hey, look, you need to leave or we're going to nuke you and everything. And so they're able to trick and kind of drag and get all the aberrants off planet or whatever. And so some of them do have abilities where they can teleport vast distances and everything. So they use these in a sense space teleportations to go to extraplanetary extra solar planets and escape that way. So now of course in 2061, with this whole war that's been raging on for 22 years, you see a second Great Depression and everything from starts in 2061. So then of course everything's starting to rebuild and everything. So they have say that from 2060 to 2061 to 2070. So some of the stuff they suggest mention is like in 2067 at Nippon, which is based. Nippon is the island nation of Japan, and they suggested China to like kind of reconfigure their economy based on platinum. Sort of like nowadays, like if you know anything about economics, like the dollar isn't backed by anything. We used to be backed by the gold standard. So in a sense, now in 2067, it's the platinum standard. So in 2071, artificial gravity is invented and everything. So like then they like kind of like with the timeline, they jumped to 2103, which they like then mentioned that like the proxies, which are like the heads of the Scion orders, basically the ones that control Scions and are the heroes of this campaign, they are bestowed with like the Scion abilities, and of course like it says here, 8 humans are bestowed with psionic powers, making them proxies for the Psi orders that they are to create. The proxies learn about the force behind the soon-to-return aberrants and about the true nature of of taint, which is like the quantum energies that the aberrants control, and like in a sense it warps them and kind of like makes them evil, and like that's what taint is all about. So that explains that and everything. So 2104, the aberrants return and start attacking like extra intrasolar colonies and everything. So 2 years later, in 2106, when aberrants attacked like the Sydney, Australia spaceport, the Legionnaires, which are pretty much like the soldiers, in a sense the super soldiers, or like they control like a pyrokinesis, cryokinesis, and telekinesis. Their order reveals themselves in defense of that, and of course like everyone's like taken aback because like for 3 years these organizations had been working in secret, and of course like everyone's kind of like well, are these the next aberrants and everything, like are they going to go crazy, and like so mentions that in like the next 14 years from 2106 to the current year of 2120, these Scion orders integrate themselves like, hey look, we're actually good guys, we're here to help, and we're here to defend you against these evil aberrants that have returned and everything. So 2107, we make contact with our first in a sense first contact with aliens called the Qin, the QIN, after like the Qin dynasty in like China history. So they're kind of like a slug-like type of aliens, and with these videos I'll eventually go into like more detail about like the alien races, the Psi orders, and stuff like this. This one is just kind of overview of the history and everything. So we make first contact with them. So like even though things are like cautious, they go well. We make next year in the 2108, they establish an embassy on Luna, the moon, and we establish an embassy on their homeworld of Chinchi, and then it keeps going through the whole history. And of course, the next year in 2109, apparently the proxies of the orders declared that the quantum kinetic order, they kind of in a sense control nuclear energies, sort of like the quantum energies that kind of match the aberrant abilities. They like deem that they're in league with like aberrants, and they the other Scion orders unite and they destroy the order and everything. So like that's in 2109. 2113 is first contact with like chromatics, which are kind of like lizard-like type of aliens, and they do kind of like a Pearl Harbor attack on like a colony we have in the Crab Nebula. It's a mining colony, so like it was just kind of like all of a sudden they appear and attack us, and like that was our first contact. And like so we had like our first contact with the Qin, which went well, and now we have like a first contact with another alien race that kind of went bad and everything in like 2113. So in 2114, there's a orbital station called the Esperanza that the aberrants attack, and it crashes to Earth, pretty much destroying much of France and everything. And then afterwards, they noticed that like the teleport order of science, which they have abilities to teleport vast distances, like so they could in a sense teleport from here to Saturn, or like if they're powerful enough they could transport people like vast distances to the extrasolar colonies like outside the solar system. So it seems like it's noticed that like they have disappeared after the crash of that orbital station. So the next date that they mentioned in this quick overview of the timeline is in 2119, when like the other orders, after 5 years of the teleporters disappearing, they make these jump ships that are able to, in a sense, do the same thing that the teleporter scions were able to do. In a sense, create faster than light technology type of deal, and they use like a biotechnology, like a basically living technology. Like the technology that we have nowadays is mostly like hard tech is what they call it in here. Like this iPad that I'm on and everything, it would be considered hard tech. Your cell phones, like computers and stuff like that, would be like considered hard tech. Biotech is like something that is like a technology that is in a sense actually grown. So like you could do like the same kind of concept. You could build, in a sense, you could build a hard tech computer, or you could grow a biotech tech computer. So that's kind of like the kind of general overview of biotech versus hard tech. So they make the jump ships using like biotech and like scion abilities and stuff to be able to, in essence, create faster than light technology to be able to get back to the extrasolar colonies and everything, and like kind of like get back to like a space, and like, okay, well, like especially like the Crab Nebula mining facility that was attacked by the Chromatics, and so we have been cut off from them for like just several years with the disappearance of the teleport. So like we're trying to get back to them with these jump ships, and kind of what's been going on these last few years. And so that brings us up to present time of 2120, which are like expeditions are about to be sent to the interstellar colonies and contact the Chromatics. And then there's another like group called the Coalition that we met, and kind of like they sent in a space ark, and like yeah, kind of the details are kind of sketchy and everything. And so like apparently like our first contact with them didn't go well. So like the details are kind of like all kept under wraps and everything. So like that's like another thing. So like we've met like a bunch of different alien races with the Chin, the Chromatics, and now the Coalition, which we kind of like most people in 2120 when the Coalition, they really don't know anything. It's like everything's pretty much classified above top secret type of deal. So that is like pretty much the quick overview of the whole timeline of the Trinity game. So like as you can see, like a good 200 years starting way back in 1921, and it goes all the way up to the present year in this game of 2120. Now, of course, I have talked about like the adventure books that like of like the Darkness Revealed series. There's the Alien Encounters. There's 2 adventure books for that, and like that kind of like it gives you like a good overview of like going forward, because like that overarching theme lasts like a whole year and reveals a bunch of like at least what White Wolf, like with those books, kind of wanted like the whole overarching theme of the game. So like that takes like a whole year, maybe 2. So like you can see like in game time, you go from 2021 to 2121 or 2122 type of deal. So, but that's just like for this video to kind of get this kicked off. Quick overview of the history, so people can kind of get like an idea, like, okay, so what's gone on before. Here we go. Here's the ideas, and okay, so this is where we stand. And now going forward with these videos, what I'll be going, like I said, I'll be going over the alien races, kind of going like more in depth on the alien races of the Chin, the Chromatics, and the Coalition. I'll be going in depth of there's like 8 scion orders now. When they first came out, then of course through like the quick history, as you can see, there's now like down to 6 because the teleporters disappeared. The quantum kinetics were deemed to be in league with the Aberrants, so now we got like 6 orders. So I'll be going over all the 6 that are still active. So like for instance, like I mentioned, the Legionnaires were there when they first introduced themselves and like defending the Sydney spaceport. Other orders like Orgitech, the Ministry, which are telepaths, like Narca, the biokinesis, they can control like manipulate their body and stuff. And of course there's like doctors, and there's also like clairsentience, like a kind of seers, and like think of like clairvoyance. So I'll be going over those orders too, to kind of give people like a better idea of this whole game. So that way, when you're looking for a new type of game, maybe you've been playing D&D for a while and you want to get into sci-fi, or you've been playing Starfinder or Star Wars or Star Trek games, and you want to try another sci-fi, Star Wars or Star Trek, you want to try another sci-fi game, going in depth with this to be able to like, hey, look, here's all you need to know about this game. So that way you have like a, even if like a, whether you're the game master or a player, you can come in and be like, watch a bunch of videos before your group meets and everything, and get a good idea of how the game, the in a sense like the like go headlong into like the whole breadth and width of this game and get a good knowledge of the game. So today, a good quick overview of the actual timeline, and coming up in the next several videos, like I said, orders, the Scion orders, races, and probably like how each continent stands and the whole like political scheme of like where Africa, Europe, North America, South America, Asia, how they all stand and everything. So this, to end it, is again the quick history of the good old Trinity game.